You can do this. That's your takeaway message. Every Sunday morning at this time, it's Easy Rightsizing from Janine Bryant, owner of Changing Spaces SRS. Janine, good morning.
Good morning, Dale.
Your focus today is, again, one that I wrestle with. I catch myself interjecting because I'm a typical customer. I have a lot of stuff. I realize getting rid of stuff is time-consuming, so I drop myself into your themes, and today it's collectibles. For me, it's sports memorabilia and my son's life growing up. For many of your customers, it's plates, figurines, beer steins, bells, spoons, or thimbles. All of these are relatable to some people. And these are items that marketers have labeled as limited edition. It was not true then, and you tell us it's not true now.
Yes. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Dale, but we work with several appraisers in our community, and one of the appraisers said something that I will never forget, and that was this: limited edition was a lie, period. If a company that was mass producing tchotchkes, for sale, and if they were making money off of selling those items, even if they marketed them as limited edition, you can guarantee that they were going to continue to make more of them as long as they were making money. Once the demand started to go down, then the production slowed down. But that is just how it works in our capitalist society. So limited edition, unfortunately, most of the time was a lie. And it certainly is not a guarantee of continued value over time, right? And you touch on something so important because this can be a stumbling block for so many of our clients. And that's why I thought it would be a good topic to talk about today, because if you are going through the downsizing process, you're trying to right size your stuff and let go of things that maybe you don't need, use, or love anymore. One of the categories of items that's hard to get rid of are those collectibles or even antiques, things that you perceive as valuable because you think, okay, well, I can't just get rid of this. I need to figure out a way to sell this to get the maximum, value out of it. And how do we do that? And so that's a question that we get a lot at Changing Spaces SRS is, what is my stuff worth? And the answer truly to that is whatever someone will give you for it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, whatever however much money someone is willing to give you for an object, that's how much the item is worth. So I've got a few things that people can think about and ask themselves about their items to determine the value. And really, I think the goal of this discussion is to get people to kind of change their mindset and remove this idea that your stuff is worth a whole lot of money as a barrier from getting rid of it or letting go of it, shall we say. So one of the things to consider, we've already touched on a little bit, is was this item mass produced? And so, Dale, I don't know, you talk about your sports memorabilia, and admittedly, that is a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. But you can ask yourself with some of the sports memorabilia, was this item mass produced or is it truly one of a kind?
Well, as far as my collection is concerned, Janine, and I'm getting a little off topic here, it's documentation to prove that I just didn't buy it from a guy on the corner.
Oh, nice.
So
okay,
for me, the stumbling block is documentation. I don't think that's probably a case with the types of collectibles we're talking about today, which again brings up the subject. You need to do your homework, your due diligence on what you have to have in order to get some worth out of these items.
Yes, absolutely. And that you bring up a good point. If anyone is a serious collector, they probably would want to see some kind of documentation if they're going to fork over a whole lot of money for a particular object. If you do have some of those mass-produced items in your home, so a lot of our clients, they have things like collectible plates, maybe they're Norman Rockwell plates, or maybe they have painted florals on them, and they're hand-painted, they're beautiful pieces, but there are a lot of them out in the marketplace. Figurines, Hummels, precious moments, I have news for you, precious moments, they're not so precious anymore, unfortunately. So even the ones marked limited edition, there are a lot of them out there. And it comes back to the idea of supply and demand. So if there's a lot of them out there, then that means the supply is high, and you have to really ask yourself, how high is the demand for these items? And is it higher than the supply or is it lower than the supply? And typically for a lot of those mass-produced items, there are fewer people buying them than there are people selling them. And so the result of that is that it drives the price down. If a buyer has a whole lot of options out there as far as buying whatever it is this mass-produced item, they're probably going to choose the lowest priced item, right? If you're wanting to buy a Hummel figurine and you get on eBay and there are 120 of them for sale, you're going to buy the cheapest one. So it drives the price down. So that's something to consider, is whether or not the items that you have in your home were mass-produced, and if they were, that is going to drive the price down somewhat. The next question that you can ask yourself is this item still in high demand? Now, this could be applied to new items or old items, collectibles, antiques, that kind of a thing. So one example might be, we help a lot of folks who are just simply emptying out a home that they've moved out of. So if it is a king-size bed that is 7 years old, no stains, great condition, it was an expensive, nice bed, that is the kind of thing that is still in high demand. If you have an antique high chair from the 1890s, it still might be very cool, but you have to admit that the demand for an antique high chair from the 1800s is going to be lower than for a relatively new king-size bed. Does that make sense?
It does.
Mm-hmm. So that is something to consider. Is there a high demand still for this item? The next factor is always condition. So condition is king, no matter what item you're talking about. So even if you have an antique and it's in very poor condition, that is certainly going to affect the value of it. And then the next factor is thinking about the logistics of getting this item into the hands of a buyer. Now, at Changing Spaces SRS, part of our business model is that we run estate sales and we sell things for our clients that they no longer need or are using. And I tell you, a pool table that's in the basement of a home in the middle of January is a lot harder to sell than a little teacup that someone can hold in their hand and walk out the door with, right? Because there's a lot more that goes into paying for a pool table and then transporting it to your house. You got to get it out of the first house, then you got to get it over to your house, and maybe it's going into the basement at your house. That's going to make it a whole lot more difficult. There might be a lot of people who would love to purchase that pool table, but do they have the time, the ability, and the money to pay or to ask someone to help them to move it? That's a whole other factor. So also, when you're thinking about this, how easy it is to get this item into the hands of your buyers, you have to think about the method through which you will sell these items. So if you use a company like Changing Spaces, we have a large network of people that we market these items to. We even have people who can help with the logistics of moving these items and all of that. However, we're going to charge for that. We charge a commission on the items that we sell. So if you're going to sell it yourself, you don't have to pay anyone else for those services. However, you probably don't have the same amount of access to market the items like a company would. So there's always a trade-off there. And so the reason, again, I wanted to talk about this whole concept of what your stuff is worth is because I want to remove it as a barrier for people who sometimes they have a hard time letting go of things because they think that my stuff is worth a lot of money and I'm not going to let go of it until I get a high price for it. And the fact of the matter is you may never get a high price for some of your things because you might have a skewed vision of how much your things are worth. And then that can be a roadblock for you to downsize and to live a fantastic next chapter of your life because you're stuck in your home with all of your stuff that you think is worth so much. And really you end up paying the highest price of all, which is your freedom and the quality of life that you're living.
You mentioned the freedom. It's all about time. There are moments where I'll get on a jag and I think, well, I can just sell some items. I'll take some photographs, get it on eBay, for example, or Facebook Marketplace. Well, the time that it takes to position it correctly, take a good photograph that's representative, that's flattering of this item, get it online, post it, follow up, reply to responses, questions. Will you do this? Will you do that? And before you know it, Janine, that item is still sitting out in the garage a month later because I don't have time to tend to the listing.
You're absolutely right, Dale. You got it. And, sometimes people ask us at Changing Spaces, will you sell this for me on Facebook Marketplace, or will you sell this on eBay for me? And we don't. And the reason for that is because it takes too much time so that it fails to be a profitable venture for us. So selling your things is usually going to cost you either money or it's going to cost you time. And so you have to be prepared for that. And you have to think about the technology aspect of it. If you feel comfortable doing that, if you've never sold anything on eBay before, it's not extremely difficult, but certainly there is a level of familiarity that you're going to have to gain with the website and with the process. And so it's easy to say something like that, oh, I'll sell it on eBay. But if you've never done it, it does require some research ahead of time.
Janine, there is something refreshing, and we all are looking for little moments of refreshment in the lives that we're living. When that item is gone, maybe you didn't get as much as you think in your mind you should, but that item is gone. There's a refreshing sense about an action like that.
And it's in the hands of hopefully someone who will enjoy it. Even, like you said, even if you didn't get the amount of money that you wished you would have gotten for it. One perfect example that I use a lot is Precious Moments. Precious Moments, they were expensive when we bought them new. If you resell them now, you're not going to get a whole lot of money for them. However, I've got two little kids, a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. My kids love them. They think they are the coolest thing ever, and now each one of them has a collection of Precious Moments in their bedrooms because it still brings them joy. And so to know that when you sell some of these things, maybe that you're not getting as much as you thought you should get for them, but if it's going to bring someone else joy, that's the whole point of a little tchotchke anyway, right? It's probably not a useful item. You buy it so that it brings you joy and it adds beauty to your surroundings, and that's the whole point.
We will reference you to a lot of different places. A step-by-step guide to your right-sizing journey is available in a book from Janine. It's called Ready to Right Size. More information is available too at changingspacessrs.com. And for free right-sizing tips, it's easy, rightsizing.com. And of course, we invite you here every Sunday morning on KFOR. Have a good week, Janine.
Thanks, you too, Dale.